Guys, it's part 3 of Daily 430 where we learn to be a better gamer. I'm sort of leisurely sitting back because thus far Zeno has made the mid-game look easy. I just want to note how huge of a change this was between the early stage where we had this 2 racks pressure all up in us, we had this stress where we couldn't really tech, blah. So it turns out this Ling Baneling bust at the start, though it could win, didn't have the goal of winning right then. It let us just get into another comfortable period where we could just build a lot of drones. Just to emphasize, look at the position we're in right now where we have all these bases up, we have, the production tab reveals how boss we are. At this point in the 10-minute mark, we were killing our opponent. 2 minutes later, still no ability to move out from Terran. As I times 8 it, when will Terran actually feel comfortable moving out? Looks like wow, we had a full 3.5 minute leisure period after that initial Baneling bust. What wonderful benefit that provided us. So now as we go ahead and scroll forward to where we were before, we've been avoiding engagements. Huge push came over from Supernova, narrowly avoiding the edge of the creep. And then he just walked up here and killed us off, and Zeno said, no problem, taking a base up here, and taking a base up here. Not an issue, no stress, no strain. As long as I control the middle, you can only hit me in so many places at once. These drops, gonna struggle. We have our spore crawlers, we have a lot of spines here. Just defending pretty much every angle. Spore crawlers, very uncommon to see in this matchup as defense against medevacs. But you can only dodge engagements for so long. Remember those speed overlords? So helpful. They are the replacement mutalisks. Zeno got himself in a little bit of a weird spot. Got himself in a little bit of a weird spot with these corruptors, but of course, to note, he had good intentions. He wanted to get these medevacs in a good position. And now he's moving down and getting the Marines in a better position. Cool. Totally sweet. Another benefit of controlling the middle, we can easily plant pairs of burrowed banelings comfortably. Great. All our upgrades continue to be coming up. Continue to expand. Relentless, absurd amounts of expanding, non-stop, like crazy. No big deal. Actually, this is a big deal. This is the moment where things become a big deal. And for any Terran player who is unfamiliar with this tactic, if you drop and most of the critical pieces of the army go to defend the drop, you can immediately sprint into center with the rest of your army. If you saw just some zerglings, you might be like, the infestors are probably unmobile. You'd have to be a little bit leery. But now Supernova actually can just burst into the middle with relative ease. The expansions all along the side having no problem whatsoever. Broodlords coming up. Having all sorts of problems for Terran coming up. Oh yeah. And finally, we actually see the first kind of noteworthy engagement from the Zerg player Zeno. And it largely relates to the tanks being unsieged. The Broodlords will allow him to push aggressively, but the ease of walking forward against unsieged tanks can never be understated. And Supernova, who's kind of been on a back footing for a really long time, has been looking really strong, but hasn't really been able to put up any aggression. And Zeno just exploited this by expanding like crazy. And look at this insane mixture of stuff defending. Corruptor, spine crawlers. Sure, there's this huge battle going on in the middle, but I love this backside stuff. And another expansion popping up, and a spine crawler eagerly awaiting to defend. I really like this finishing blow that Zeno does, where he incorporates the creep-spreading queens into the ultra-late-game mixture. 5 Broodlords and 1 Infestor is really just not a scary army. There's just nothing really that terrifying about it. But when we can transfuse and just keep ourselves super alive, it ends up being so potent. Look at the Broodlords taking a ton of damage. Transfuse. Transfusing it. Transfuse. Oh no, you're low on health. Are you? Well, let's just transfuse you. Yeah, nice. This was one of the cleanest games that I have ever seen from a Zerg after an early 2-Rax aggression. Just really clean, ultra simple, not a problem at all to deal with. We do have a little bit of extra time for part 3, so what I'm actually going to do is step into a game where things were not so nice for Zeno. Very different opening, but again, we want to see the benefit of just sacking expansions. The longer we're feeling under threat, the longer we can just kind of delay our layer and deal with this push that's coming up. So I want to breeze through this game very quickly, just to again show this idea of patience and positioning and losing expansions and retaking the expansions. And what did we talk about as a generalization last game? Well, this early Ling Baneling pressure helped shut down any follow-up aggression from our opponent. And now Zeno is doing the double reactor stuff. Another very aggressive play. Zeno I've seen very often do this roach thing right off the bat when he sees a tech player. And what I love so much is that Zeno is not positioning these roaches to try to kill these Hellions. He's positioning these roaches to either force the Hellions to pull back to defend or to commit. Here, these Hellions are committing. And they must kill a lot. And we see Zeno, even though he broke in, or excuse me, Supernova, even though he broke in, has way, way the hell more in terms of that unit's lost tab. Going for the Spire is a little bit easier in this circumstance. We haven't been devoting as much to our Ling-based stuff at this point yet. But what we're seeing in Supernova's base is a very aggressive mix of a lot of tank, a lot of Marine. Why is the double Hellion play particularly smart on this map? Because we can get 4 tanks up very swiftly with those 2 factories and siege up right here. And suddenly Zeno is in a lot of trouble. He's going to try to do a quick push right here, and it's very easy to lose the game right there. Completely overcommit. We did see that Zeno did do a little counterattack. We see all the SCVs are kind of running around. If we go to the workers killed, it's actually not that many from Zeno. Supernova did a pretty good job sort of avoiding all that damage. So now we're in another seemingly awful looking spot. I want you in your head to compare this spot right now to the spot that most Zergs are in right after a 2-Rax is done. It's really important for the Zerg just to realize how big of a window he has. Right now, Zerg has really done nothing but allow this to die. And he's expanded away from it. Same sort of theme here. Even this small number of Mutalisks is quite honestly forcing Supernova to commit more to this little island. This is becoming very difficult for Supernova to abandon. Especially right now when he starts splitting the forces on high and low ground. He's really committed to this location. And Zeno can actually start to exploit that. This might look like a really rough position for Zeno, and it's kind of rough, but it's also a sticky spot for Supernova. He's killed off this expansion, and tragically, Zerg didn't just 1A his whole army in, and Supernova was able to easily take it. No, Zerg is actually pulled back, and now Terran is stuck here. Where does Terran take a third? Here? Well, he actually needs to take some units and send them to here to kill it off, but he's busy dealing with Mutalisk harass, and he has all these units over here. Maybe he could try to do a dart down there, but the Mutalisk can easily move back and forth between here so nicely. Layer now getting rebuilt. This sort of constant poking and prodding. Remember in the last game we saw the Lings and Banelings scoop around to make this a little island sticking out in the middle of nowhere? These Mutalisks are doing the same thing. Siege tanks force you to make little islands with all your units. This is one of the reasons MarineKingPrime his style is quite effective in a lot of circumstances. Players aren't used to the fact that his whole army is mobile. Now, Zeno does go to strike this, and it's not exactly a super key upgrade that just finished. If I back up just 10 seconds, it's not like he just got +2 or +1 or got baneling speed. That's all been done for quite some time. What he has been able to do is, if we look at these army supply tabs, again, Zeno looks like he's a little bit behind, but we have to consider the fact that there's all these tanks. Here's a lot of food, here's a lot more food, like this is 10 food, what, here's this is another whatever. I can't even calculate that fast. 2, 4, 6. Yeah, it's like gonna be another, wow, look, just count how much food is here. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12... was another 20, there's like 30 food worth of stuff here. So Zeno can easily get himself into position. The longer you wait around as a Terran player, the larger this threat is going to be as Zerg continues to crunch in. The sort of patience and isolation is so key. Still ends up being a little bit tricky, and this is always a little bit of a concern when there's this follow-up adjoinment. But from a Zerg standpoint, it is always far better to hit 2 half armies than it is to hit 1 whole army. Plenty of patience. He's literally about to get shot at. But all you gotta do, eventually those tanks are gonna have to unsiege and get out of position. And even in a moment like this, incredible patience from Zeno all around. Even pulling the frickin' drones. And there's actually a momentum effect that's coming in for Zeno. Kind of similar to last game. The more Terran tries to put pressure on, the harder it is for Terran to actually get a third base. Starting to see the similarities between last game and this game. In the last game, huge push meant Supernova had to be very careful for a long time. And in that period of being careful, Zeno was able to start gobbling up the map, and these little attacks were these little islands, and every time he tried to pull one back, Zeno was taking another base. In this circumstance, Supernova's being super aggressive, so Zeno's not taking that many bases, but he's still forcing the Terran to just get out of position and always have about half an army back home. And Zeno will end up with a rather sort of nice, clean, easy, straightforward cleanup. As the game continues, things seem pretty normal, etc., etc. I'm going to show you the end of the game, just because I know you want it. And then after that, I'll take questions. Many questions. Needless to deal with the drops. Last game it was corrupted. Housemlings and Baneling are dealing with drops. Another little island of Terran play is formed. Terran's actually going to pull back so he can reinforce his little island. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that lovely? But Zeno, who's 2 boss, doesn't wait. He just keeps stepping forward, and we have a no-hive Zerg. Only now, as the expansions are starting to even out, and the engagements are going to start being bigger and bigger, the Zerg really starts saying to themselves, yeesh, I really need that hive tech up. Until then, Mutalisks and Flexing is all we really need to do. The final push. Speeding things along. The final push. It's coming up. It's coming up. Bang. Bam. Bada boom. Bada see you soon. Fantastissimo. Cool. Cool. So we got the chance to do a little bit of a bonus game. Didn't do too much analysis in that game. Just did a lot more of pointing out the patience and also the importance of that sort of isolation that goes on. We saw the isolation happen in both games. And what happened if Supernova couldn't be isolated, as we saw in the first game, that meant that his positioning was sufficiently on his half of the map, which meant Zerg had the other half of the map totally free to expand to, which is so great. F5. 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 I really want the question grabber to work. Whatever, let's take a question from the real chat. Ha 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 ha. Day 9, are those D&D books or Marvel books on your shelf? They are Marvel books right here. Here's my Mostly my Marvel comics. I have Ultimate Spider-Man. I have the Death of Spider-Man saga there. Thank you again for those, Gabe. Just to the left of that, this is Why the Last Man, one of my favorite comic series ever. We have some Green Lantern up here. We have All the Sandman is just off there. There's the Bone comics. Here I have what is that? Oh yeah, Logic Comics. That's a depressing book. Yeah. Oh yeah, and then I have Akira and DMZ there. Okay, cool. Let me take more questions. I like comic books. Yeah. 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 Let's see here. K Lone 90 says, Day 9, as a Zerg player, how can I anticipate when to attack the island of Terran units? It seems sometimes that the island is able to hold off a direct push. The important thing is, this is going to sound weird, but I'm still going to say it. As you are intercepting that path between them, one of two things will happen. Either the Terran player will have to wait a long time to reinforce, build up enough of an army, and then reinforce. For instance, you have Mutalisks cutting them off. Terran has to wait until he has a whole bunch of Marines and tanks, and then he can rejoin together. And you want to hit them a little while before they can do that. What you actually want is for the Terran player to try to reinforce a little too early. The more broad, basic answer is way longer than you think. In general, those tanks will have to unsiege at some point, and that's a great time to hit it. Or in this game with Zeno, we saw Zeno just wait and 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 wait, and then he hit it. If you're ever in doubt, wait a little while longer. You don't actually need to kill that off. Almost ever. The only time you really need to kill it off is when he's about to invade your front door and kill you. And even then, sometimes you can just hold it off. Or hold off a little longer. Like we see Stefano do that, where he has his natural expansion hatchery is being shot at by Marines. And he still has everything held back. And then, whomp. The most important thing for Zerg is have patience. Yeah. Let me see here. Tortuga says, Day 9, how would Supernova have gotten out of his situation where he was constantly on the defense? One of the big things that Terran players will do is they'll start to strategically split up units and do drops. To where, if I see your Mutalisks over here, then you know what? I'm going to drop over here. So I know you have to use Zerglings to defend this because your Mutalisks are over here. And then I'm going to make the huge push. All that good stuff. So honestly, Supernova was in a situation where after he did the 2 racks, he was on the defense because of the huge bust that happened. And there's nothing that he can do about that. That's fine. But for the rest of the time, really, strategic dropping is one of the big things. But it's actually a mix of what Terran has to do. They're not defending or attacking. They have to do a lot of both in the late game. And I would just suggest accepting that you're going to be getting harassed by Mutalisks, counterattacked by Zerglings. Try to position your rally points to deal with the counterattacks, build your supply depots to wall off for counterattacks, and try to do pushing to try to get the Mutalisks out of position. Push into the Mutalisks, so that way they kind of have to be on the opposite side. But, yeah. I don't really think you can deal with it too much. You just have to let it happen. Let it happen. Let me see here. Let me see here. Zumwar says, Day 9, in that second game, he went Mutalisk instead of Infestor. What determined that to be a better move at the time? In game number 1, we saw that Zeno responded with this Ling Baneling thing, and if you're going Ling Baneling, you've effectively delayed your tech for a very long time, so Mutalisks are just going to become weaker because we don't really have a lot of gas. We've delayed it for a long time, so let's just commit to the Zerglings. And because we've done that for our early and mid-game defense, Infestors combine with that quite nicely. In game number 2, we had the Roaches that were allowing us to do a lot of defense, and were buying us a good amount of time. And at that point, we were already mining a good bit of gas. We were able to get our layer up a little faster. So that's the one thing that works quite... It's almost kind of like keeping the tech even. If he's going to stay really low on Marine Marauder tech, so a lot of times it's good to stay low on the Ling Baneling. If he's teching up fast, like getting double Hellions, he's probably going tank Marine soon. We can get the Mutalisks up pretty soon to deal with that. The biggest one, though, is just gas. Just the way that the gas worked out and the sort of units we were committing to. I think in Game 2, it would have been totally reasonable to end up getting the Infestor tech. But if you're getting the Infestor tech up that early, you'd probably also need a third hatch up pretty early in Zeno's position. But low on hatches, fast on tech kind of leaves you really in a Mutalisking position. I feel. At least I feel that way. I'm going to take one more question, and I'm going to run. Let me see here. Actually, I'm going to take this question from Equinox. Day 9, how can you harass a Terran when you do a style that does not involve Mutalisks? You just don't have to do any sort of harassment. That's the first answer I want to give. You just don't really have to in a lot of circumstances. Harassment can be good as long as it accomplishes a clear goal. Like Mutalisk harassment, as we saw in game number 2, the really fast one that we went through, in that game, the Mutalisk harassment forces these islands to appear, where there's the pushing island that has to stay in one group to defend against the Mutalisks, and the at-home base island, where we have to have all our units clustered. We can't just have Marines sort of spread willy-nilly throughout there, or else we die to it. That accomplishes a clear goal. It separates these, and then we can isolate and take them out. If you're going Ling Infestor, a lot of times you don't need to really do any harassment. You don't need to like burrow Infestors and try to run into his base. Maybe later on down the line, but that's just not where the strength lies with it. A lot more times just using clever burrowed Baneling tactics is a lot more effective. Getting your tech up a lot faster, a lot more effective. And taking a lot more expansions fast, a lot more effective. If you're desperate to try to find a way to do pressure, small drop pressure is actually not really so bad against Terran. Just getting a few overlords with drop and just moving in with some lings to drop here and there can force them to get some stuff out of position. But I don't really like doing that very much. You can do it. Is there any really other notable way? Just lane counterattacking. You don't really need to harass a Terran that much. The ways that you can do it are just big direct attacks, like what we saw in the start of game number 1 with the Ling Baneling. I'm gonna go to the Red Bull LAN after I go to South by Southwest tomorrow. So there's gonna be no dailies for a week. But I think if you go to redbullusa.com/LAN, is that right? Yeah, that is the website right now. Looks like it has footage from the last LAN there. So if you just go there to redbullusa.com/LAN, you'll see some more info. And of course, tune in on March 16th to 18th, where you're going to be watching live with me. It's going to start at 6 p.m. Eastern, which is going to be 3 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for watching. You're awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. All right.